Okay. Now the recording is started. So good morning, everyone. So we from Group 2 are presenting on the topic Linux design principles and kernel modules. So the group members are Hina, Nikita, Sahana, myself, and Divyashri. So I'll hand it over to Nikita. Nikita, please continue.
Agenda of our topic is design principles, components of Linux system, kernel modules, module management, driver registration, and lastly, conflict resolution. Linux is a version of Unix which is rapidly evolving operating system. Hello everyone, I'm here to talk about design principles of Linux. Linux is a multi-user, multitasking system with full set of Unix-compatible tools. Its file system adheres to traditional Unix semantics and it fully implements the standard Unix networking model. Linux runs on a wide variety of platforms. It was developed exclusively on PC architecture. From the start, Linux attempted to squeeze as much functionality as possible from the limited resources, and today Linux can run on a multi-processor machine with hundreds of megabytes of main memory and many gigabytes of disk space. Its main goals are speed, efficiency, and standardization. There are POSIX documents for the common operating system functionality. Next slide. Abhinandan, next. Functionality, and Linux is designed and be compliant with the relevant POSIX documents. Linux gives standard interfaces to both programmer and the user. The Linux programming interface adheres to the SVR core Unix semantics rather than to BSD behavior. A separate set of libraries is available to implement BSD semantics in places where the two behaviors differ significantly. In addition to the basic POSIX standard, Linux currently supports the POSIX threading extensions, pthreads, and the subset of the POSIX extension for real-time process control. Further, Joshi will continue.
Okay, now let us learn and understand about the different components of the Linux system. Here are two diagrams, I mean the figures. Actually, the left side one is in the prescribed textbook. This is the one which I found it on internet. I found it more informative, that's why I've added. I think it's better to follow this in the examinations, but then to understand we'll use this for now. So there are different components like system management programs, user processes, and user utility programs, compilers, and then system shared libraries, Linux kernel, and loadable kernel modules. So among all these, and one more thing is that the kernel, the particular kernel module, what it does is it actually interacts with the hardware devices, hardware like CPU, RAM, and input-output devices. So in this particular presentation, what we'll be going in detail is user utility programs, system shared libraries, Linux kernel, and loadable kernel modules. So these are the four important components of the Linux system, and we will be studying on that. So let us move further. Okay. The three main bodies, as you saw in the diagram, there are many components, but then there are only three main bodies. These are kernel, system libraries, and system utilities. Let us see all of these in detail. So first thing is kernel. So it's understood. It's actually understood because we have already studied. It's actually the core of the operating system. So it is responsible for maintaining all the important abstractions of the operating system. What its main task is, it provides necessary functionality to run processes, and it also provides the system services to give arbitrated and protected access to hardware resources. We'll just go about it. And then example is virtual memory and processes. Moving on, we have system libraries. So what the system libraries are, these are nothing but a set of functions through which whatever the applications are there, these can interact with the particular kernel. So these actually facilitate and implement the operating system functionality, which does not need the full privileges of the kernel. And some of the important points are, they allow the applications to make kernel system service requests, which make system, by making system call, they invoke transferring control from privileged user mode to privileged kernel mode, as I said before. So they also provide these C language buffered file handling functions, and these are all implemented in the system libraries. Next, there are something called as routines, nothing but the functions that we call again and again for some functionalities. So among that, sorting algorithms, mathematical functions, and string manipulation routines are also included. So these are the ones which comprise of the system libraries, and hence we can say that all these things, or the system libraries, actually facilitate, and they actually provide uh, act as a bridge between the application and the kernel. Next, moving on, uh, before we move on, I have some important point to be said. That is, the operating system interface is visible to running applications. It is actually not maintained directly by the kernel. So what I'm trying to tell is, the application actually, the whatever the applications are there, they will make calls to the system libraries, which will in turn call the operating system services which are necessary. Then we'll move on to system utilities. So system utilities are nothing but the programs that perform some individual specialized management tasks. These are actually invoked once to initialize and configure. Some of them, rest of them are run permanently, but then some of them will be just invoked to initialize something and to configure them. Once it is initialized and configured, they are not used again. Okay, these some of the examples are this logon requests from terminals, and also updating log files. Next, there is something called as privilege mode in the Linux. So this is also referred to as kernel mode. In Linux, user mode code, none of the user mode code is built into the kernel. So any operating support code that does not need not to run the kernel in the kernel mode, it is actually placed in system libraries. So this is what we discussed earlier. This is actually how we are bridging all the topics. And the kernel is created as a single and monolithic library. What I mean by monolithic is, a monolithic library, or it's actually monolithic kernel is a one, is such type of an operating system architecture where the entire operating system is working in kernel space only. So that is what the meaning of this monolithic binary, and it will improve its performance. So all the kernel code and data structures are kept in a single address space. That's what I said. That's the kernel space. Single address space is here, with respect to this, is kernel space, and no context switches are necessary when a process calls an operating system function or when a hardware interrupt is delivered. So I think this is quite clear now. And yeah, moving on. Okay, before that, before I explain user mode programs, in continuation with this particular address space and how the why context switches are not necessary, I'll just brief it out once again with a more detailing. So user applications can actually load shared libraries and run shared libraries at runtime, and to pull in a needed piece of code, so the Linux kernel can load the modules dynamically at runtime. So whatever the modules that are required, it can load at the runtime, the kernel does not actually necessarily need to know in advance which modules may be loaded. So they are actually the independent loadable components. Whichever modules are required, they are just loaded and in a runtime and they are run. So this is what a broader meaning of this particular slide is. Next, in this particular components of Linux system, as I said, we discussed three main components. This is actually not that main component, but then it's also a very important component. The rest of them are actually self-explanatory, as we all know, compilers and all those things. User mode programs. So user mode programs actually consist of the system utilities and user utilities. The system utilities will include all the programs that are necessary to initialize the system. Some of the examples are configure network devices and to load kernel modules. So the loading of the particular kernel module comes under this user mode programs. So running server programs also count as user utilities. For example, we can say that when we are handling user login requests, we are making use of such things, and hence the user mode programs are very much important. So moving on, this is just an understanding about components of the Linux system. Now over to Hina.
I'm Hina from 6M CSE. I'm going to explain about the kernel modules and the module management. The Linux kernel has the ability to load and unload the arbitrary sections of the kernel code. The kernel code that is been loaded run in privileged mode. Here the term privileged mode means having full access to all of the hardware permissions. So kernel modules are convenient for several more reasons. As you all know that Linux source code is free, and hence writing kernel code, compiling, reloading, rebooting, and relinking is a cumbersome task. So if you use kernel modules, you do not have to make a new kernel to test a new driver. The driver can be compiled on its own and loaded into the already running kernel. So as the kernel module interface allows third parties to write and distribute, it cannot be distributed under the term GPL. Here the GPL refers to a term called General Public License, which allows the users to modify any kind of source code. Any device drivers that the user needs can either be loaded explicitly by the system or can be loaded automatically and also unloaded when not in use. The basic and simple example is the CD-ROM. Whenever the user wants to use CD, can load it and unload it when not in use. The module support has three main components, that is the module management, driver registration, and conflict resolution. The first component is the module management, which allows the modules to be loaded into the memory and to talk to the rest of the kernel. So loading a memory means loading its binary contents into the kernel memory. The system can also load any references that a module makes to kernel symbols. So it is done by splitting the job of module loading into two separate sections, and that is the management of sections and the handling of symbols. Linux maintains an internal symbol table in the kernel. This symbol table does not contain the full set of symbols defined in the kernel, but contains the set of exported symbols which defines an interface by which a module can interact with the kernel. Next slide. There are some unresolved references in the kernel. So when a module is to be loaded into the kernel, our system utility first scans the module for these unresolved references. So this is done by looking up in the kernel's symbol table and the correct addresses of those symbols in the currently running kernel. So when these references are resolved, the module is passed to the kernel for loading. If it cannot resolve any references in the module, then the module is rejected. The loading of the module is performed in two stages. First, it reserves a continuous area of virtual kernel memory for the module. So this is a temporary memory to store the kernel source code. Second, the system call then passes the module plus any symbol table that the new module wants to export to the kernel. Moving on to the final component. The final component is the module requester, which defines a communication interface to a module management program to connect. When the connection is established, the kernel will inform the management process whenever a process requests a device driver, a file system, or a network service that is not currently loaded, and will give the manager the opportunity to load that service. Now the manager regularly queries the kernel and loads the module when it is in use and unloads it when it is no longer actively needed. Now Divya will continue the rest of the topics.
Hello everyone, I'm Divyashri. Before we dive into the topic, let's try guessing the answer to a simple question. How does the kernel know that a new driver is available? Just give it a thought for a second. Yes, your guesses were right. It's through driver registration. So let's know more about it. Driver registration allows modules to tell the rest of the kernel that a new driver has become available. Once a module is loaded, when the rest of the kernel knows that a new functionality is provided, it remains in the memory. The kernel here performs various functions, like it maintains the dynamic tables of all the known drivers and also provides a set of routines to allow the drivers to be added or removed from these tables. It also ensures that when the module is loaded, it calls the module's startup routine, and when the module is unloaded, it calls the module's cleanup routine. So these two routines are responsible for registering the module's functionality. Moving on. A module may register many types of drivers and may register more than one if it wishes. Like for example, a device driver might want to register two separate mechanisms for accessing the device. The figure here is the device driver. Actually, a device driver is a kernel module that forms a software interface to an input-output devices, that is I/O devices. Further moving on, let's know more about registration tables, what it includes. It basically includes device drivers, file systems, network protocols, and binary format. Firstly, the device drivers. These drivers include character devices, which includes printers, terminals, and mice, and block devices, including all the disk drives and network interface devices. Next, the file systems includes implementation of routines for storage of files, typically on disk or a network file system. Example, NFS or a virtual file system. Next, the network protocols may implement an entire networking protocol, typically IPX, or a set of packet filtering rules for a network firewall. Then the binary format, it specifies a way of recognizing, loading a executable file. So this is all about driver registration. Next, Sahana will be continuing.
Good morning, I'm Sahana of 6th A. So basically the term conflict refers to dispute. So in general terms, we say if there is a dispute between two or more people, they're going to resolve that. So here also we're gonna end our topic with conflict resolution. So commercial Unix implementations are usually sold to run on vendors' own hardware. One of the advantages of a single supply solution is that software vendor has a good idea about what hardware configurations are possible. The problem of managing the hardware configurations becomes more severe when modular device drivers are supported. So the term device driver refers to a specific kind of software program that controls a particular hardware device. Next slide. So Linux provides a central conflict resolution mechanism, and its aims are as follows. The first aim is to prevent modules from clashing over access to hardware resources. Second aim is to prevent autoprobes. So basically, the term autoprobe refers to investigation into an unfamiliar matter. So Linux is going to prevent the investigation into an unfamiliar matter. So here it refers to the preventing from interfacing with existing device drivers. And the last aim is to resolve conflict among multiple drivers trying to access the same hardware. When multiple drivers or when two or more drivers are trying to access the same hardware, Linux is going to resolve that conflict also. So one example is given there. To all of these, the kernel maintains a list of allocated hardware resources. It is also expected to reserve the resource with kernel database first. This allows the system administrator to determine exactly which resources have been allocated by which driver at any given point. So that is the end of our topic. Thank you.
So, I think all of you would have got a better understanding about our topic, and we would like to thank Shruti ma'am for giving us an opportunity to present this topic and share our views on the topic. We hope all of you have understood.
Any questions, any of you?
No, ma'am.
It was a good presentation. Good work.
Thank you, ma'am.